gentlemen, here we are again. Today I'm talking about open chord tunings and where and how you might want to use them. But before we get stuck in, make the usual appeals to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Yes, if you fancy treating yourself to some free music, I make a lot of folk/blues music, which makes a lot of use of fingerstyle guitar and slide guitar. There's a link in the description. Have a look down below and help yourselves to some free songs. So, open chord tuning. Why might you use it? I mostly use it for fingerstyle guitar and slide guitar. In this video I'm going to be focusing on fingerstyle guitar, but I do intend to make a separate one for slide guitar, which, if I've made it by the time you watch this, will have a link in this corner. So, fingerstyle guitar, often, but not always, you might think of in terms of having a couple of things going on at once on one guitar. So you'd have a bass part and a melody or harmony part. Now this can be done in standard tuning, obviously, but it can be a bit limiting because you often find yourself just thumbing the root note. Which is fine, but in standard you've got no fifth or octave to go up to easily. Whereas with open chord tuning you've got a lot of strings which are playing fifths or octaves of your root note, so you've got lots of open strings you can go to, whilst leaving your left hand free to play things higher up the neck. For this video I'm going to focus on open D and open G, and there is a reason why I've lumped these two together, which I will explain shortly. So open G to start with. I'll start with open G because it's probably the most similar to standard tuning. In that low to high, you are tuning to D, G, D again, G, B, and D. Main similarity with standard tuning, if you've not spotted it yet, is that the second, third and fourth string, that's B, G and D, are tuned the same as they would be in standard, so there's a bit of a safety net there if you're just starting out because you've got some familiar shapes to work with. Obviously this gives you access to some very easy major chords because you can just bar them. G, C, D, all very straightforward, and you can move that shape up and down the neck like you would with any bar chord. But then one of the things that you've probably realised is that you get a lot more nuance out of your chord playing if you don't strum all the strings at once all the time. So that leaves you free to break up the chord a bit and work on some more interesting shapes. Obviously there are adjustments that you can make with the basic major shape, and that's all down to what you do with the third. The third, in the case of this shape, is the second string tuned to B, but if I raise that, G sus4, and I can't lower it from that position, but if I were playing higher up the neck, I could take C major, for example. I'm just taking a few notes from the whole chord there. I've got the root, octave, and the third above, but if I lower the note on the second string, C minor. Indeed, this shape, if you can see that clearly, will probably look familiar. In standard tuning that would be A minor, and indeed if you just play the fretted strings, that's still A minor. It's the same notes. So it's giving you easy access to basic major, minor and sus4 chords, but it's also worth exploring some other shapes. But don't forget you've got two D strings here. So why go all the way up to the 7th fret to play your D chord when you could play it down here? What I've done there is I've fretted the two G's, the 3rd and 5th strings at the 2nd fret, so they're playing A. I've got a nice big power chord there, nice big open 5th. Note that I'm not playing the top two strings, but if I were to fret the B string at the 1st fret, that would give me a C, and suddenly I've got a very bluesy 7th chord without the 3rd. But I can play it with the 3rd as well as a a D major shape there if you, the 4th string at the 4th fret, D major. There's also some fun to be had by experimenting with other familiar shapes from standard tuning. One good example for open G is to take, there's what some people call the easy F chord. If you include, as some people do, the open high E from standard, that would give you an F major 7 chord. If you do it in open G, the 1st string is of course not E but D now, so instead you get F6. So yeah, don't be afraid to take those familiar shapes and experiment with them and just see how they sound, because you can get some interesting things out of it. Now, on to open D. Tuning, low to high, D again, A, D, F sharp, A, and D. What I'd like you to think about here is the intervals between the strings in this tuning. And this is the reason I wanted to do D and G together in the same video. Because once you start to get the hang of the shapes for one, the other one starts to make a lot of sense as well. So looking at 5 of the strings in this tuning, and in this case I'm looking at the bottom 5, so D, A, D, F sharp and A. And compare that with the top 5 strings in open G. So G, D, G, B and D. So what you have going from low to high is the root, the 5th, the octave, then the 3rd, and then the 5th again. So you've got all the elements of the major chord, the root, 3rd and 5th, obviously because it's tuned to that chord. But crucially, they're in the same order. All that's happened is they've been shifted up or down a string. So actually the shapes that you would form to make chords in open G would be the same shape as the chords you'd make in open D, you've just got to shift them up or down a string. So much like the chords with open G, I've got a major chord here, and if I want to go to D sus4, I've just got to raise the pitch of the 3rd string, in this case, by a fret. And remember, that's the same as it was in open G. The difference was that changed the pitch of the 2nd string, because that's where the 3rd of the chord is. And again, it's just moved up or down a string. So same ideas apply. Got a minor chord here, E minor. It's the same shape, I'm just moving the 3rd around. Where it will start to differ is when you're starting to form shapes like the 5th chord. For example, the A shape here would look slightly different, although very similar to the A shape in standard actually. So I've got A, E, and to get the octave A, I fret not at the 2nd fret but the 3rd fret, and then my 3rd is all the way up here on the 4th fret. Similarly, I can get an A7 shape. There's no 3rd in there. What I've done is I've got the A, E, G, and I've got an open A up here. The main difference in playing styles between open D and open G is going to be what your thumb's doing. Because obviously with open D, your root note is right on the bottom string, whereas with open G, it's on the 5th string. Which means that a lot of the time, not always, I hasten to add, but a lot of the time you may find it easier to do octaves with your thumb in open D, whereas open G tends to lend itself more to 1-5-1-5 bass lines, that sort of, as opposed to octaves that are easier in open D. One of the other things to note, and this is another reason that it lends itself so well to fingerstyle guitar, is that when you do change position, for example, as you might often do, go up to the 4th, I've got the G here on the 5th string, G root, and then I've got a 5th from the octave D on the 4th string. And then if I want to move to the 5th, I've got the A above. If I were an open G, I'd have the D below, but I can easily form a root and 5th from that, or I might be halfway up the neck and got an octave there or an octave here. Plenty of options for the basic 1, 4 and 5 chords when it comes to playing the bass line. I'm going to move on quickly to the equivalent minors, because these are also very useful. Tuning is basically the same, the difference is that the thirds have been dropped by a semitone. So in the case of open D minor, I've got D, A, D, F, A, D, and in G minor it's B flat rather than B on the second string. Now obviously that gives instantly a more minor tone to what I'm doing, but I can obviously just raise the pitch of the third, and we're back in major territory. So you just raise it up by 2 frets to get to the sus4. But don't let it limit you to those shapes. Much like with the major tuning, there's other ways to get more interesting chords. One particularly useful feature of the open minor chord tuning is how easy it is to get the 6 and 7 chords. And what helps with this is that if you think about the triad of, since we're in D, D minor, D, F and A. And if you think about the 6th chord, which would be B flat, that's B flat, D and F. So all you're doing is raising the 5th by a semitone. And so that's all we have to do here. Where I've got my 2 A strings, the 2nd string and the 5th string, fret those at the 1st fret, so they move up to B flat. And the notes I have in between, the 2 open strings here, are D and F. And that's another easy shape which you can move up and down the neck, because all you've got to do is fret these 2 in-between strings on the fret behind. So to get C, shunt this up to the 3rd fret, and I'm fretting the in-between strings on the 2nd fret. So I've got C, E, G, and octave C. Same idea in open G minor. Obviously the G minor triad, G, B flat, D. If we raise the 5th up to E flat, that's then E flat major. So the shape is going to be slightly different because we've shunted it down a string. And because we've got the 2 strings down here tuned to D, we raise those a semitone to E flat, and then we've got this is going to be a slightly different shape. Just the shape of my left hand is slightly different here. So I've got E flat, G, E flat, and G again. And of course I can include the B flat on top if you want to include the 5th. But again, that shape is easy enough to shift up to F. Arguably easier if you do it slightly differently. 2 lowest strings playing F in octaves, and then if you fret the 2 strings above the octave F, so the 2nd and 3rd strings at the 2nd fret, you've got F, F again, A, and C. In a similar way, fretting quite judiciously and, omitting certain strings, you can get a very easy major third as well. You just have to be careful which notes you use. So in the case of G minor, this would be B flat, so I'm hoping to get B flat, D and F in there. But I can do that by raising the 2 Gs up here, the 3rd and 5th strings, up to B flat. Another B flat on the open string here, the 2nd string. And I get a D, my 3rd, from the open D string in the middle. And then I can either use this top D, or I can fret that at the 3rd fret for an F, or I could even fret the 3 strings, 3, 4 and 5, to get an open 5th. With the fretted strings and the 2 open strings at the top give me the octave and a nice high major third. So I hope that's been useful and gives you some insight into what you can do with open chord tunings. As I mentioned earlier, I've got plans to make videos for open chord tunings for slide guitar, and there's a couple of other tunings which I quite like, which I'd like to share with you. Again, if you subscribe to the channel, then you'll probably get notified when those go up. Thank you very much for watching.